Richard Hale here. What happens when political power, family business, and media visibility all collide in one name? Recent court filings, financial disclosures, and investigative reports have reignited serious questions about how modern political families operate, where public office ends and private enterprise begins. Tonight, we're not dealing in gossip. We're looking at structures, at money flows, at influence networks, and at the uncomfortable gray area where politics, branding, and business intersect. Because when visibility becomes currency and power becomes leverage, the real question isn't personality, it's accountability. If you value deep analytical breakdowns that cut through noise and focus on systems, make sure you like this video and subscribe. We examine power, influence, and the forces shaping modern democracy. Let's get into it. Recent court documents and reports have unveiled a pattern that many have long suspected but rarely seen so clearly confirmed. The dynamics within Donald and Melania Trump's relationship, the financial workings of their public lives, and the larger Trump family business framework are now more transparent. What we see is not a typical political family, but rather a sophisticated system where visibility turns into profit. Personal ties seem transactional, and the line between public service and private gain is intentionally blurred. Let's focus on the numbers first, as they reveal a compelling narrative. Reports suggest Donald Trump amassed at least $1.4 billion from his presidency. Consider that the presidency, an office meant to serve the public, appears to have become a significant revenue-generating entity. This isn't just about book deals or speaking fees, common for past leaders. It's about the systematic conversion of political power into personal wealth during and immediately after his term. The scale is unprecedented, raising fundamental questions about what the presidency has become under someone who views it primarily as a business venture. But this financial narrative isn't limited to Donald Trump. Each family member has carved out their lucrative niche. Eric Trump reportedly became a billionaire by leveraging family ties and proximity to power. Don Jr. secured profitable contracts in the drone industry and serves on the board of Polymarket, a betting platform with notable financial clout. These are not minor side ventures, but significant business engagements capitalizing directly on the family name and the access it provides. Particularly noteworthy is the nature of these businesses. Platforms adjacent to gambling and industries typically under regulatory scrutiny now have direct connections to a family once holding the highest office. Critics argue convincingly that these operations profit greatly, while sidists stepping oversight due to the political influence wielded by the family. This creates a feedback loop where political power generates business opportunities, which then generate wealth that can be reinvested into sustaining political influence. Now let's shift to Melania Trump, whose story sheds light on how this family operates. Recent revelations about her upcoming documentary living arrangements and strategic public engagement reveal someone who knows exactly how to monetize visibility while maintaining personal independence. This isn't a traditional First Lady role involving ceremonial duties or philanthropy. It's a calculated approach to brand management and revenue generation. The $40 million documentary being developed for Amazon is a prime example. Directed by Brett Ratner, a figure with ties to Epstein-related files and multiple harassment and assault accusations. The project highlights the complex web of relationships within the Trump orbit. These aren't partnerships based on ethical alignment or shared values, but transactional relationships where financial opportunity outweighs other factors. The fact that someone with Ratner's controversial background can lead such a high-profile project about a former First Lady reveals significant priorities. Insiders suggest this documentary is the primary driver of Melania's current public engagements. Her appearances at events or in media projects are not from personal interest or public service commitment. They are strategic, creating promotional opportunities and revenue streams. Every public appearance, interview, and staged photo opportunity serves a financial function. Its visibility as currency, attention transformed directly into dollars. Her living situation at Mar-a-Lago further illustrates this relationship. Court filings reveal Melania lives in a separate 75 FT tower on the estate, while Donald occupies the main family quarters. This isn't merely about personal preference or a desire for privacy. It's an architectural separation that mirrors emotional and strategic distance. They share a last name and property, but live largely independent lives. The proximity is a facade for public perception, while reality is one of independence and deliberate distancing. This separation serves multiple purposes. It allows Melania to maintain autonomy over her projects and revenue streams by establishing herself in Florida and managing ventures independently. She can optimize tax structures and ensure control over her income. It's financial pragmatism disguised as a living arrangement, reinforcing a pattern across the Trump family where personal relationships are secondary to financial optimization. Consider what this means for their public appearances. When we see them together at events, posing for photographs, appearing unified for the cameras, it's a performance. We're witnessing brand management, not intimacy. The public narrative of togetherness masks a reality where collaboration occurs mainly for profit. Observers note Donald Trump selectively engages with family members, showing enthusiasm when there's money to be made, yet keeping his distance otherwise. There's a phrase about the Trumps: the family that grifts together stays together. However, recent reporting shows this isn't entirely accurate. They may collaborate for profit, but they are far from unified personally. Each member has carved out independent ventures, leveraging the Trump name, but operating with significant autonomy. Loyalty seems contingent on opportunity, with the unifying force being the grift itself. This transactional approach extends to the family's interactions with external partners, corporations, and high-profile figures seeking access or regulatory favor. Resources are channeled through sponsorships, endorsements, and strategic partnerships, forming a sophisticated system where influence can be purchased and profit secured simultaneously. The Trump family's navigation of this landscape shows a deep understanding of media dynamics and political economy. They've mastered converting notoriety into tangible financial return. However, beneath all this financial maneuvering lies something darker that requires our attention. The Epstein files and related controversies represent what many critics see as the most troubling aspect of the Trump story. These aren't mere allegations of association. They're questions about patterns of protection, institutional silence, and fear among those in power. When these topics come up, when powerful figures repeatedly appear in the same circles, when the same names and places resurface in concerning contexts, it becomes larger than any single individual. Consider the actions during Trump's first term to prevent damaging revelations from emerging. Commentators suggest that the fear of exposure influenced policy choices, personnel decisions, and legal strategies. When powerful figures go to great lengths to suppress information, we must ask what they feared might be revealed and why those revelations were considered so dangerous. The involvement of high-ranking officials, including former attorneys general and senior law enforcement figures, adds another layer of concern. When individuals with deep institutional knowledge appear connected to efforts limiting transparency, it raises questions about whether systems designed to protect the public were instead weaponized to protect the powerful. Some allegations specifically point to Mar-a-Lago as a recurring location in disturbing narratives involving Epstein and his associates. While these claims require careful scrutiny, their consistency has fueled legitimate suspicion. The physical separation between Donald and Melania, her choice to live in a distant tower, has intensified speculation about what she might know and why she chose that distance. Critics argue Donald Trump was deeply embedded in a broader network linked to Epstein's criminal activities. These claims remain politically charged and contested, but cannot be dismissed outright. The suggestion that witnesses or evidence could have dramatically altered elections in 2016 and 2020 highlights why so many powerful interests might have been motivated to ensure silence. If even a fraction of these allegations hold truth, the implications for democratic accountability are staggering. What's particularly frustrating for those highlighting these issues is how easily public focus is diverted. Sensational, yet ultimately less significant controversies dominate headlines, while more serious allegations are quietly sidelined. Geopolitical grandstanding, outrageous policy proposals, and deliberately provocative statements generate clicks and outrage while distracting from more uncomfortable questions about accountability and past conduct. The Epstein case symbolizes for many the darkest aspects of elite corruption. It's not just about who knew whom or who attended certain events. It's about behavior patterns, protection and silence, institutional fear. When people connected to government, wealth, and influence repeatedly appear together, when investigations stall or redirect, when key figures die under suspicious circumstances before testifying, the issue becomes systemic rather than individual. This is where personal and political intersect in deeply troubling ways. Melania's separation from Donald, her independent financial ventures, her careful public image management, all take on different dimensions when viewed against these darker allegations. Is her physical and emotional distance a form of self-protection? Is her focus on independent revenue streams a way to ensure financial security should larger revelations emerge? These are uncomfortable questions, but responsible observers must ask them. The broader Trump network operates as a carefully managed ecosystem where visibility, influence, and profit flow in coordinated ways. Media partnerships aren't just business deals. They're vehicles for maintaining relevance and generating revenue. Public appearances aren't just ceremonial. They're strategic opportunities to reinforce brand value. Every interaction is calculated to maximize mutual benefit, whether through corporate sponsorship seeking access, media figures gaining exclusive content, or family members securing their financial futures. What makes this particularly complex is how it all functions within ostensibly legitimate frameworks. These aren't shady dealings or overtly criminal enterprises. They are high-profile documentaries on major platforms, board positions at recognized companies, real estate ventures, and media projects, operating in plain sight. The grift is sophisticated precisely because it appears legitimate using business, entertainment, and political structures to achieve outcomes that would raise immediate red flags if conducted through more obviously questionable channels. The question of accountability becomes central here when financial transactions are intricate, when corporate structures obscure true ownership and benefit, when political influence is exerted behind the scenes. How do we ensure those in power serve the public rather than enrich themselves? The Trump family's approach exposes the limits of existing oversight mechanisms, disclosure requirements, ethics rules, and conflict of interest regulations. All these seem inadequate against actors viewing public office primarily as a platform for private gain. Legal filings and financial disclosures offer glimpses into this world, but are often incomplete or deliberately opaque. Documentation on assets and revenue streams paints a portrait of a family whose cohesion is structured around financial alignment rather than emotional bonds. Public narratives emphasize unity and shared values, but the underlying reality is one where personal separation coexists with coordinated efforts to capitalize on notoriety and influence. For Melania specifically, the combination of physical separation, independent projects, and strategic public engagement reveals someone operating with considerable agency within this system. She's not merely a passive participant or a trophy wife. She's actively managing her brand, optimizing revenue streams, and maintaining autonomy from her husband's most direct controversies while benefiting from the Trump name's visibility. It's a delicate balance requiring a sophisticated understanding of media, finance, and public perception. The documentary project exemplifies this balance, providing a platform reinforcing her public persona while creating economic opportunities. It allows her to control her narrative while generating substantial income, all within a professional and legitimate framework, despite ethical questions about the director's background. Navigating these contradictions, maintaining a respectable public image while operating within ethically compromised networks, characterizes how the entire Trump enterprise functions. What should concern us most is what this reveals about the intersection of wealth, power, and accountability in American politics. The Trump family didn't invent leveraging political office for personal gain, but they've made it so explicit that it forces confrontation with questions we'd rather avoid. If the presidency can be turned into a billion-dollar enterprise, if family members use power proximity to secure fortunes, if ethical boundaries are mere suggestions, what does that mean for democratic governance? The silence around these issues, particularly the Epstein connections, reflects a failure of courage among institutions that should demand answers. Media outlets focus on sensational yet superficial controversies, avoiding tougher investigative work, implicating powerful figures across political and social divides. Law enforcement and prosecution systems seem paralyzed when investigations approach the truly powerful. And the public, bombarded with constant outrage and distraction, struggles to focus on the most important questions. Those calling for sustained attention argue that public pressure and refusal to look away are essential. Distractions and outrage cycles shouldn't replace meaningful scrutiny of what occurred and why. Continued discussion, open conversation, and demands for transparency are seen as the only ways to ensure powerful figures aren't shielded from accountability. The stakes are too high and implications too serious to let these questions be buried under newer scandals and controversies. The story of Donald and Melania Trump, their separate lives within shared spaces, their transactional relationship approach, their sophisticated monetization of visibility and influence. All this matters not just because it's dramatic or gossipy. It matters because it reveals how power operates at the highest levels, how wealth and influence create protective barriers, and how systems meant to ensure accountability can be ineffective against actors who understand manipulation. As the story develops with more court filings and detailed reporting, we face a choice about what we're willing to accept and demand. Are we comfortable with political office as a revenue opportunity? Satisfied with oversight mechanisms unable to constrain the truly powerful? Will we let serious allegations fade because they're uncomfortable or inconvenient politically? These aren't abstract questions, but fundamental to the democracy we want and the standards we expect from leaders.